Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the City of Jackson Police Department, the Jackson County Office of the Sheriff, the Lenawee Sheriff's Office, and the Michigan State Police, we certainly want to thank you for making it a point to be here this morning. Standing behind me, representatives from each of those agencies, Sheriff Gary Schutte with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Troy Brevier with Lenawee County Sheriff's Office, and Lieutenant Renee Gonzalez with the Michigan State Police. This morning, we collectively just want to provide updated information regarding the circumstances surrounding the vehicle pursuit and officer-involved shooting that occurred in the city of Jackson on Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, which resulted in the death of 31-year-old Lenawee County man, Jacob Austin Hikes. We thought it was important, as we discussed to just update the community, get some additional information out there that we have not shared up to this point. Starting out, I just want to start by recognizing the law enforcement officers engaged in a firefight that day with an armed and violent individual. From the Jackson Police Department, Sergeant Wesley Stanton, Officer Bradley Elston, Officer Jason Allison, Officer Abigail Albright, and Officer John Claude Solomon, and from the Jackson County Office of the Sheriff, Deputy Mark Easter. That day, in the face of extreme danger, their actions that day were nothing short of heroic and extraordinary. They acted swiftly, deliberately, in order to bring a high-risk situation that most will never see in their law enforcement career to a quick ending, resulting in no further danger posed to the public. That day, initial information came from the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office at approximately 5:10 p.m. of the suspect being wanted in connection with the shooting of his brother in Lenawee County. Law enforcement in Jackson was provided with a description of the suspect vehicle in connection with the incident, along with the suspect description and his information. Through cell phone tracking, information was received the suspect was initially showing to be in the area of Vandercook Lake. An updated location was received a short time later at approximately 5:26 p.m., indicating the suspect was on the north side of the city of Jackson, in the city. While checking the area for this vehicle, Officer Jason Allison spotted the vehicle parked into a parking space in the parking lot of the Dollar General store located at 1502 Cooper Street. While preparing to make contact with the vehicle and the suspect, the vehicle suddenly pulled away, leaving the parking area, and fled, leading to the subsequent vehicle pursuit that ensued. The pursuit traveled through the northeast area of the city as officers pursued the vehicle, the suspect, and the sole occupant through multiple pipe bombs out of the window, which exploded as officers continued to pursue the vehicle. In addition, during the course of the pursuit, the suspect fired multiple gunshots at pursuing vehicles. At one point, the suspect vehicle came to a stop on Elizabeth Street near Perrine Street. This is where the patrol vehicle driven by Officer Elston was shot multiple times by the suspect, and Sergeant Stanton was shot one time by a bullet. Following the exchange of gunfire at this time, the suspect fled again in the vehicle. A short time later, the vehicle came to a stop near the intersection of Southeast Ave and East Washington Avenue. There was further exchange of gunfire at that location, and the suspect was shortly after determined to be down on the ground. Officers involved approached the suspect, determined he had received gunshot wounds. Paramedics and the ambulance were called to the scene. They quite quickly transported the suspect to the hospital here in Jackson at Henry Ford, and the suspect was pronounced deceased a short time after arriving. I think it's important to understand the time frame. The total time from the beginning of the vehicle pursuit to the final shot being fired was approximately 7 minutes. So this wasn't a prolonged incident. It was short in duration and ended rather quickly. Additional pipe bombs and ammunition were also located in the suspect's vehicle. I will let MSP Lieutenant Gonzalez speak more to their investigation and provide what information they are able to release at this time. It goes without saying, the suspect was heavily armed, and who knows what further terror was prevented by the courageous performance of those involved, and through multiple law enforcement agencies working collaboratively on this day. Lastly, I am grateful and happy to report Sergeant Stanton is doing well and recovering from the injuries sustained. The other officers involved do remain on paid administrative leave as we wrap up our administrative investigation here in the next week or so. Next up, I'd like to ask Sheriff Bevere to come up. He's going to give a little bit of more background information on their investigation in Lenawee and any other details that he is able to release at this time.
Thank you, Chief. As the Chief stated, this incident began in Lenawee County, so I wanted to give you some information on how it began. On Wednesday, November 6th, at approximately 4:15 p.m., Lenawee County Sheriff Department deputies were dispatched to Hickman Hospital emergency room for a gunshot victim stemming from a domestic violence incident which occurred in the 500 block of Pentecost Highway within Franklin Township. Originally, responders believed that the assault was between two brothers. However, investigators later determined that the assault actually occurred between the younger brother, Jacob Hikes, and his father, Robert Hikes. According to Sheriff's investigation, Jacob Hikes, age 31, was confronted by his father, Robert Hikes, age 68, about Jacob stealing money from Robert's bank account to buy drugs. They argued Jacob produced a long gun, which was taken away by Robert. Jacob then pulled out a pocket knife and then produced a handgun from the cabinet and struck Robert in the mouth with the gun. The older brother, Mitchell, age 34, intervened and tried to wrestle the gun away from Jacob when the gun discharged, striking Mitchell in the right forearm and hand, with the gun eventually landing on the floor on the floor. Jacob fled, telling his father he was going to kill himself and the police better not come after him or he will shoot. Jacob left in a red Dodge Caravan heading to Jackson. Robert transported Mitchell to Hickman ER for treatment of the gunshot injury and called 911. Lenawee County Central Dispatch was able to locate a phone for Jacob Hikes. A ping of the phone showed Hikes in the Jackson County area, and a be on the lookout was put out to Jackson County 911 that led to the pursuit, an exchange of gunfire, and Hikes being shot by the police. Lenawee County Sheriff detectives determined that Jacob Hikes was a drug addict and possibly suffered from mental illness. Hikes had over 19 contacts with law enforcement, 11 bookings in Lenawee County Jail between 2012 and 2022. One of those arrests was a prior fleeing eluding in 2022. Since 2013, first responders have been dispatched to the Hikes address 24 times for assorted calls for service. On November 13th, 2024, detectives from the Sheriff's Office searched the Hikes property on Pentecost Highway, assisted by Michigan State Police Bomb Squad and K-9 unit. Investigators located and confiscated 33 functional pipe bombs, bomb-making material, literature on making bombs, over 20 guns in various stages, uppers and lowers, and hundreds of magazines of ammunition. So, as the chief stated, this incident could have been a whole lot worse, and we're glad that the sergeant is recovering and doing well. Thank you.
Sheriff Gary Schutte with the Jackson County Office of the Sheriff.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your attendance here this morning. Now, I've received several calls from concerned citizens worried that this may have been an organized group or that more problems could be coming as a result of this. The state police is handling that portion of the investigation. I'll leave it to them to address those issues. I do want to highlight the outstanding team effort that occurred here. One department that we have not mentioned yet was Blackman Township. They had two public safety officers also respond and render aid to the suspect after he had been downed. I want to highlight the bravery of the Jackson Police Department, as well as the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office in getting that information to us as quickly as they did. And of course, Jackson County Central Dispatch. They did an amazing job during the course of that 7 minutes of terror. The deputies that were involved in this circumstance are Sergeant Scott Watson, Detective Mark Easter, Deputy Tom Brower, Deputy Katie Love, Deputy Jackie Hackworth, Deputy Amy Bretz, Cameron Brining, and Deputy Santos Dela Cruz. I want to kind of go over this a little bit. It seems a little redundant, but I think it's important that you understand the facts that led up to this. Sergeant Scott Watson was working that day and was responsible for administrating the supervisory detail of the county sheriff's office. He was overseeing dispatch, be on the lookout for this suspect, and originally the dispatch came in as a cell phone being tracked in the area of McDivitt and 2nd Street in Summit Township. Now, we knew that this was a shooting, so due to the nature of that, he contacted Detective Easter and in an effort to try and determine where this subject may be going in Jackson County, to search our records and to try and figure that out. Detective Easter then contacted Detective Ebersol as he was on the road and attempted to have her look up information on the suspect as well. Enter the vehicle into the flat camera system so that we could get real-time information about where the subject may be located, as well as to look into the information in police records to make a determination where he might be headed. Sergeant Watson then coordinated efforts with additional deputies to go into the area near the McDivitt and 2nd Street area in Summit Township. It was at that time that additional information was coming in from Lenawee County on their cell phone tracking that the subject was over in the Cooper Street area, a little bit north of town. So we began to shift to go that way. Additional information was then put out to Jackson PD about what was occurring. Detective Easter was responding to that area, and moments later the city were involved in that pursuit. Easter was in the area of Ganson and Ellery when he first engaged the suspect. At that time, the suspect passed in front of him and fired multiple rounds at him. One of the bullets actually hit the front of his vehicle. Nothing happened with Detective Easter at that point. He began to do something that we call paralleling the pursuit. So what he was doing is not necessarily engaging in the following of the other police cars, but trying to anticipate where he might go and driving off in other directions. As the pursuit continued, additional deputies began to join in as they came into the area. Deputy Cameron Brining became involved in the pursuit at Michigan Avenue near Elm Street. Deputy Dela Cruz entered the pursuit on Michigan Avenue right near Henry Ford Hospital near the Page Avenue intersection. Both continued the pursuit until the suspect stopped on Elizabeth Street. Both of these deputies then exited their vehicles and engaged the suspect along with Sergeant Wes Stanton. The suspect fired multiple rounds at them and they began to take cover behind their vehicles. Both deputies reported hearing bullets hitting nearby them as they sought this position of cover. Neither of those deputies, however, fired their weapon. In the ensuing gun battle, Sergeant Stanton, who was engaging with the suspect at the time, was struck in the arm, and ultimately the bullet lodged, as you heard earlier, in his back area. Deputy Brining went to Sergeant Stanton to render aid. He was able to do this as Deputy Dela Cruz covered him. As he went and approached him, he took his tourniquet out and wrapped it around his arm, and then took Sergeant Stanton to his patrol vehicle and transported him to the hospital. The suspect continued on at that moment in time heading toward Detective Easter's position, as I explained earlier in that parallel scenario. At that time, Detective Easter then engaged the suspect, and he fired multiple rounds at the suspect in an effort to stop him. When the suspect eventually did stop, the final time, which was at the near the intersection of East and Washington, the city units engaged with him, and another gun battle occurred. When it appeared that the suspect was down, Sergeant Watson, who was on the scene, utilized a ballistic shield to approach the suspect with several city officers and several deputies. It was at that time that one of the deputies and the two Blackman Township PSOs attempted life-saving efforts on the subject. Those are the facts. Now I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every law enforcement officer that put their life on the line during this event. In the face of extraordinary danger, they showed incredible courage and unwavering dedication to our community. I know the sacrifices that they make every day and the risks that they have to carry to uphold the law and to ensure your safety. Please know that their service is not unnoticed and is not unappreciated. Our community deeply cares about our officers and our deputies, and I want to thank them publicly for the things that they did that day in putting their life on the line. Thank you.
Lieutenant Renee Gonzalez from MSP will be up next. Please understand that the state police's investigation is still ongoing on it, and he can talk to that. It may be for a little while yet. So certainly there are some things he may or may not be able to answer, or simply may just not have the answer for you today. Following his comments, we will field some questions. So think about what question you might have, and we'll get to you.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. I have with me also Detective Sergeant Isaac Mills. He is the officer involved of the investigation for the officer-involved shooting. He'll be able to answer any questions that I can't. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Sheriff's Department and Jackson County PD, their officers and deputies. Without them engaging in this, it could have been a lot worse. The brave men and women who jumped out and did what they do every day is what brought this to an end, and we want to acknowledge that. We're glad that they're okay and no one was seriously injured in this incident. What we have is at approximately 5:48, November 6th, our detectives from the 1st District Special Investigation Section were requested to go down to Jackson City for an officer-involved shooting. That is the part that we handle. Anything else before the shooting, anything that happened in Lenawee County, that's all separate from us. We just handle the actual officer-involved shooting. Our detectives went to the scene. They went to where the suspect was deceased and started their investigation. We had our canines en route. We had the bomb squad because we understand there were bombs thrown. Troops, also we had our MSP troops along with our lab and other people from the agency as well. And when they arrived, they found that the suspect vehicle, a maroon town and country van, had 6 explosive devices located in it. They were all the same. They appeared to be homemade. Also an AR-style rifle or firearm and a semi-automatic pistol was also located in the vehicle. Packaging from the exploded ordnance or the bombs that he had thrown out during the pursuit were also retrieved by our Special Investigation Section detectives. At this time, all that information that was garnered on scene was taken, sent to our lab for further investigation, and that's what we have pending at this time, is further investigation. Our detectives also came on scene, and they do a round count of how many rounds were fired, if possible. There's a lot of work for them to do out there, but they're skilled detectives. They know what they're doing out there. So how many of the suspect may have shot or how many of the officers on scene would have shot. So that's something else that we look into. Our bomb squad also came on scene. Again, they were helping with the search of the area because we were concerned about any unexploded ordnance that the suspect may have thrown from his vehicle. A big canvas search was done by, again, our canine, our bomb squad, troopers, our lab, and we did not find any other exploded ordnances. So we're confident that there's nothing out there that people are going to find and anyone's going to get injured. Anything else? We had our lab scene as well to procure evidence from the crime scene, take everything that they can that's going to help further investigation, and along with our canine units and a traffic crash reconstructionist who would also map the whole area out, and that's something that makes it a little easier to determine what happened, possibly finding rounds and where everything was spent. So a lot of this is an ongoing investigation for our detectives. Detective Sergeant Mills, along with other detectives, are still working this case, following up on leads. They've been speaking to other victims or witnesses, and garnering all that before they send their packet to the prosecutor's office, and they will review what, if any, charges would be brought for the officer-involved shooting. So at this time, we have nothing further to add at this time. Again, we are waiting for our lab reports to come back, as well as the autopsy report, and then they're going to garner or put all that together, and that will be sent down to the prosecutor's office. All set, sir. Thank you.
I guess we'll open it up for questions, and obviously, depending on the question, we'll determine who is best present to answer that for you. So, Darius?
Thanks, Director Hitt. So a couple of questions about the pursuit itself. Do we know why the suspect came to Jackson? And secondly, was there a conscious attempt on the part of law enforcement to corral him into that section where the shootout and his death occurred, or did that just occur accidentally or spontaneously?
Yeah, I'll speak to the corralling question. No, that where that ended, where it ultimately ended at, it was just kind of spontaneous. As I said earlier, this was a rapidly evolving situation that lasted no more than, again, 7 minutes from the beginning of the police pursuit to the final shot being fired, and it was just the route that the suspect drove and the path that it took the officers involved in is where it ended. In a minute here, I'm sure that Lieutenant Gonzalez or Detective Sergeant will be back up. I'll let them speak to if there's any information on why he may have been coming to Jackson.
And what's the policy that you guys go through when a chase might become dangerous to the public? Obviously, the suspect is firing out of his car.
Yeah, certainly every department here has a police pursuit policy in place, and there's a lot of variables you take into consideration. Certainly, in this case, one of the primary things considered is what is the reason you're attempting to apprehend this person. And as the Sheriff Bevere stated, we knew he was involved in a shooting incident in Lenawee County, was believed to be in possession of a handgun. So the need to apprehend him was great to start, but then once he started firing at law enforcement officers, the need to apprehend him became even greater. And I don't have the speeds of the pursuit available. To be honest, I don't know them, but I can tell you just from watching the body cam footage, this was not a super high speed pursuit. The speeds never got way up, in excess of where we would be looking at this and saying, are these speeds too high to continue? But in this serious of an incident, the need to apprehend him to protect the public was very great, was much greater than the risk posed if we decided to let the guy go. We needed to get him into police custody one way or the other.
I hate to push on that question, but I will push a little bit. He was shooting at law enforcement officers. Would it not have been advisable to back off and just follow him to a location where there were less people out in the street and on sidewalks?
Well, there's different tactics that are used, and certainly the more space you create, the more apt the chances he would elude us, and he would be gone, and we just don't know what may have happened had that actually occurred. So our officers early on did drop back quite a ways at one point, and some additional officers actually picked it up coming from a different direction because our initial officers in the pursuit had created that distance from him. So there's just so many different factors that come into play in these situations, but ultimately it comes down to what the reason we needed to get him into police custody was great in order to protect the public.
And this might not be a question specifically for you, but do we know how many rounds were fired by law enforcement and how many fired by the suspect?
Yeah, I do not know that, and again, I will have Lieutenant Gonzalez coming up and whether or not he can speak to that, I don't know. Hey,
I don't know if you're able to tell this yet or not, but he was obviously shooting while driving. Were you able to determine like how many houses or vehicles were shot by the fleeing suspects?
Lieutenant Gonzalez may have the answer to this. I know at least one vehicle was struck during this. I'm not certain about any residents. Early on in this incident, shortly after it occurred, we actually received information that a citizen was possibly shot, a female. We quickly were able to determine that that wasn't accurate. There was a female who was clearly upset by what she observed and was pretty frantic, and some witnesses thought possibly she had actually been shot, but that ended up not being the case. So he may be able to speak to that here in a minute as well. As many houses were hit.
Another question, I think this might be better for Michigan State Police. With the guns that were found inside his vehicle and inside his home, were these legally obtained? Were they actually registered to him? Do you have any idea of like where they came from?
I'll have him. I'm going to have him come up now because we got a few questions waiting for him and see if what information he may be able to provide.
Good morning, Detective Sergeant Mills. I don't remember all the questions. Nothing in the investigation thus far has uncovered why the suspect came to Jackson. So I can't answer that right now. As to the round counts, that is still an ongoing process. There has been obviously multiple people shot, law enforcement side, and he had shot numerous times. And it's just a time-consuming thing to count all the rounds, account for them, and then see how many the suspect shot. So I don't have an answer for you to that right now. It's still under investigation. And as to how many houses or cars were hit, I know of at least one house that was struck. The car that was potentially struck, that the chief was just talking about from the civilian potentially victim, but she wasn't. If it was hit by a bullet, it just gouged the car, but honestly, it might have just been the pipe bomb, one of the explosions. But other than that, I don't have, it's still under investigation. I don't have the exact numbers for you.
What about the legal ownership of the firearms that were recovered?
That is still ongoing. The lab takes the firearms directly from the scene. They do their analysis, and then on the back half is when we run all the firearms and continue our investigation from there. So right now they're still at the lab, so I don't have them in possession. So I don't. Investigation, so I'm not going to answer that right now.
Did you say only one home was hit?
Thus far, but the investigation is still going on that I know of.
It was earlier indicated that there might have been some mental health issues at play. Has that been determined as a fact yet or not, or that's still under investigation?
Still under investigation.
What might be a timeline for some of these facts coming out?
I can't give you an exact timeline. Like, this was a very chaotic event, as the chief and the sheriffs said. The pursuit route was quite lengthy, and there was numerous shooting scenes, so it's not just it was at one scene. It was fairly easy. It was just kind of a large-scale investigation, so I can't give you a timeline.
Any information on why the suspect may have had pipe bombs at the ready in his vehicle? Presumably that wouldn't have been rigged on the day of the event.
Right, so Lenawee County has the investigation with the suspect and his residence and the pipe bombs. I do know that from their investigation that he wasn't working with anyone. I know that was a fear from the from society standpoint, that he was working with someone or he was planning this large terroristic threat. None of that has been uncovered. What I have specifically is the officer-involved shooting. So the facts I got was from other investigators, like Lieutenant Gonzalez said. We don't have anything before or after. We just have the shooting.
Are there any protocols for police to withhold fire in a residential area to make sure residents or innocent bystanders are safe?
I can't answer that because every single agency is different, and I'm not in charge of any of the agencies that were involved in the shooting, so I can't answer that. Any other questions I can help out with? Thank you.
I will address the last question posed. I do know through our administrative investigation, there were a couple shots fired by one of our officers involved in more of the residential area. I will say ultimately the pursuit ended and the majority of the shooting from law enforcement took place. It was more of a commercial, industrial type of little, probably a 10-block radius. Not a lot of houses in that area, not a lot of pedestrian traffic, but certainly some businesses in that area where that occurred. But yes, when officers use force, especially deadly force, all of those things are come into consideration of where are you at, what's the traffic, how many people are around. But also a big part of that is what is the risk of not stopping this individual from behaving or committing the crime that they're committing. And it's a delicate thing to balance, certainly with our police officers that's in the middle of it at the time and making these split-second decisions. I am just very obviously glad and fortunate that neither any law enforcement nor the suspect struck any innocent bystanders. We did not have anyone shot besides Sergeant Stanton and the suspect in this incident, and there is a level of to a degree that we were very fortunate there that somebody else was not shot during this altercation.
And how is the sergeant? We've heard reports that he's doing okay. Did you confirm that?
Yes, I actually released that a little bit ago, but he is still recovering from his injury, but he's doing well.
Still hospitalized?
No, he's been out of the hospital for quite a while actually, so he's doing good. Good spirits too.
And when you get to the end of something like this, do you guys tend to generally look back and say, okay, maybe this we could have done better, maybe this is something else?
No, that's a great question. Yes, certainly when this is all done, when the criminal investigation's done, we will, all the agencies involved, I'm sure can speak on behalf of them, we'll have a debrief to look at the incident and exactly what you just said. What areas did we do well in? What areas not so well? What could we have done to improve the incident? You can always find some areas for improvement. Any incident, I don't care how small or large, it is never going to be perfect. And you got to have those discussions to hopefully improve for the future.
Back to the suspect that was said that he wasn't working with other people. Was any other plan then uncovered on his part?
No, not that we know.
Not at this time in the investigation, Detective. Have time for a couple more questions before we wrap it up, if you have any. Hearing none, again, we just,
Were any additional pipe bombs found by, I know you guys were, or MSP was asking residents to, if they found anything, to call them, or if there anything?
No, ma'am.
no, and the lieutenant spoke to that. I can tell you that was a major concern of ours as well, and especially the following morning, because a lot of that initial search was done in the dark, trying to go back the path. MSP went back out during the daylight hours as well with canines, with their bomb squad, and retraced the path again to just reassure us as law enforcement, but also the public that 99.9% certainty there was no unexploded or undetonated pipe bombs that were out there that were a risk to the public. So again, those of you that did make it, we certainly appreciate you being here today, and thank you for taking the time. And as any additional information may come up, we'll be sure to update you when that has. But I think we've covered a lot today and gotten a lot of other information out there to the public that we think was important. So thank you.
Thank you.